So one of the top resources I use for character art is Vecteezy. Check this out. So on vecteezy.com, not only do they have awesome backgrounds, like look at this one right here. That's breathtaking. Now these backgrounds are ready for animating, so you could have people walking behind this tree or even inside the house. They also have awesome cartoon characters, so if you're learning to rig in Adobe Character Animator and you're not sure where to start, they have a large selection of characters whose artwork is essentially ready to be rigged. Check out this little girl right here. She is absolutely perfect. And if you need a mouth set, they have those as well. So be sure to check out vecteezy.com using the link down below in the description. It's also the top pinned comment. So for this tutorial, I wanted to go over how to rig an entire puppet, ground up, but not like the other videos we did in this series. This one we're going to go over the most complex build that you would need in a video. So if you're looking for a character that can walk left, walk right, walk back into the background scenery, and interact with objects throughout the scene, this is the tutorial video you're looking for. So in the description of this video down below, you'll find a file that looks a lot like this one here as far as layers, but there'll be no artwork in it. You'll have your top arms, your left arm, your right arm, and hands, and then a bunch of different hand 1, hand 2, etc. for you to drop your artwork in. Once you get your artwork sectioned out in the way that's laid out in this folder, come back and we're going to get on rigging. By now, you should have all of your artwork layered out in the same way that I have it layered out here. We have, you see, like your top hair layer would also be like any hat layer that sits in front of your face. So we have the arms, the glasses here that obviously goes behind the face background, and then we have the foreground glasses. Make sure also that if you have a blink set, you have your default eyelids included. You see here we have a default, and then we have the blink. And the most importantly, make sure the pluses, any pluses that are in the layers, you don't delete, because the pluses will actually make things independent in the Character Animator software. Okay, so coming into Character Animator, we're going to go File, Import. We're going to come to the folder that our puppet's located in, our Illustrator file, and we're going to click Import. And once that is imported, we're going to begin rigging up these angles one at a time. And I would like to go over what each of these angles are. So, Miss Rexy, going in here, we have this first top folder is frontal, and you see how frontal contains frontal, left quarter, right quarter, and rear. Well, these are all stationary angles. None of these are going to walk. The reason that they are separated from the ones at the bottom is these ones aren't going to float. They're not going to move around. Whereas the left profile and right profile will move around. They're rigged completely, well, not completely differently, but they're rigged slightly differently, and they'll move extremely differently compared to these stationary angles. So like the left profile and the left quarter look the exact same, but will move differently. Coming into frontal, we're going to begin rigging this from the top down. Oh, I have the wrong Professor K here. Here we go. This is the unrigged version. So going in, we should have this same file system as me, and we're going to begin rigging. We're going to start with the face, and then we're going to move through the body. And you can search things, like this is why it's important to have layers named correctly, because we can search things like the word blink and find every blink that we have. And you want to make sure you select the blink file, not the right eye or left eye. And if you hold the control button, CTRL, control, you can select all the different blinks. I usually like to start with my blinks just because it's kind of a lot of clicking. The software tends to move slower the more rigging you do. So if you have to do a lot of layer selecting, it's best to do it early on if you have a slower computer, because it's just going to be all that much more slower after we get all the rigging in. So once all the blinks are selected, come over to the left-hand side here and you have your triggers panel. We're going to click plus, create trigger. And you'll get this orange trigger word. We're going to click and drag the blinks to the orange trigger. Right click and rename it blink. And then clicking this little black box, we can set a hotkey. I like to use 1. And at the bottom, the latch is like an on-off switch. Right now, it's like a button that you have to hold down, and when you let go, it turns off. And when you select it, it's more like a light switch. Click a button, press the 1 button and it's on, press the 1 button and it's off. Okay, so all of the blinks are selected. We're going to click the Lego brick, the Add a Behavior section, and you can do this to any one of the blinks that are highlighted yellow. And we want to add a cycle layers. And then scrolling down in our behaviors on the right-hand side, we want to change. You need to pay attention if you need to go top to bottom or bottom to top. Obviously, you want your eyes to close and then open, not open and then close. So it'll be obvious which one you need. Mine is top to bottom. And you want forward and reverse and hold on to last layer. Once those are ticked, our blink will work properly. So we have the blink rigged. The next thing we're going to move on to is our heads. So what we're going to do is we are going to create another swap set, or we're going to create a swap set, and we're going to select left quarter, frontal, and right quarter from any one of the angles, and we're going to drag it in. And you'll see here that we get this little finger right here. You see this little finger with like a circle around it? That means that it has a hotkey over here. So if it has that finger with a circle there, that means it's already on your hotkey side. That's a little trick so you don't accidentally grab too many. And now what we can do is select multiple of the same angle and bring them over all at once. So select all of the right quarters with the exception of the very first one you used and drag it over to right quarter. Holding control, we're going to do the same thing for frontals and left quarters. And now you'll see here, if we double click frontal, it'll turn like white. It'll have like that lighter color to it. That means it's the default. It does not need a hotkey to show up. If anything else shows up or disappears, frontal shows up instead. So assigning our hotkeys to left quarter, it's going to be 2, and right quarter will be 3. And then we set both of these to latch. I guess frontal could be latch 2, but that doesn't matter as much because it's the default. We're going to right click swap set and we're going to rename it to head angles. And now that we have our eyes and our head rigged up, there's one thing we need to check. This is a step that is often skipped, I notice. There we go. And what we need is actually our head layers and our face layers exposed. So expose all of the head and face layers, just like this. And then make sure, click on your head and make sure this main head handle here is at like where our head would attach to our neck. And the same thing with face. Bring it down to where our head attaches to our neck. And you want to do that with every single angle. This dot right here is our center of rotation. So wherever these dots are is where our head is going to want to rotate from. It's based on the face layer, but I have had some issues if the head layer, main point here is too high up. So I'm in a habit of bringing head and face both down to where it connects. Okay, so now our heads are attached to our bodies and the blinks should be working. One more thing on the head is I wanted to add dangle to the hair. So if you have a character with pigtails or longer hair, you can add a little realism with this. So we're going to search hair in the top search bar. And we actually have a couple different hairs here. Let's see. I think that's the one we want. Yes. So focusing on top hair, we're going to grab this down here. Yep. The one that looks like a target is a joint where a bend will happen. And the stick is a bone where we want zero bend to happen. There's different ways we can apply each one and different purposes. The handle tool is what we need, the one that looks like a target, and we're going to add it to the end of his hair. And we're going to add dangle. And we're going to do that to top hair on the left side and the right side. And now if we want to cut corners, I'm all about cutting corners where I can. Holding shift, let's select both of the dangles and let's hit Control C, or you can go up to Edit, Copy. And we're going to copy these dangle behaviors and we're going to go to all the other top hairs and we're going to paste them on by hitting Control V, and then you'll need to move them into position. Top hair. Control V again. Coming down to this one, Control V again. And do that for all of the top hair layers. If you're having trouble knowing where it should be, you can always turn your layers off or just look for the blue bounding box. That shows you exactly where that object is that you're interacting with. Okay, so now we have dangle on all the hair, we have blink on, and our head is attached at our neck. That's really all we need for the head. After you get that done, our head is pretty much all rigged up, and we need to move on to the body. So, closing up our head folders, first things first, we're going to rig our arms. The frontal arms are different from the left quarter and right quarter and rear and all the other arms. And that's because I do one unique thing that I think is super cool for immersion and using your character in a full 365-degree way. So I rig the arms up so they can go in front of and behind the character in even one at a time. So the way we do that is we're going to create a swap set. And in that swap set, we're going to create 4 triggers. And the top trigger, we're going to rename arms forward. The bottom trigger, we're going to rename arms backward. And to rename, just in case you're not noticing, I'm right-clicking the orange trigger, then clicking rename. And we're going to name this one left arm forward. And then likewise, this one is going to be named right arm forward. And here's the skeleton. We're going to rename the swap set arms, frontal arms. And now if we come into top arms, and then we also want to open up body, and we have left arm and right arm inside body as well. What we need to do is drag the top right and left arm to arms forward, the bottom right and left arm to arms backward. And now here's the part that is, you have to make sure you do it just right. Grab right arm on bottom and left arm on top and move that to left arm forward. And then do the opposite. Left arm on bottom, right arm on top, and have that be right arm forward. And now we need to set a default. I like to have the arms backward as a default personally. And then we'll set our hotkeys to Q, W, E. And we're going to select them all and make them latch. And now our arms should be able to interact in front of and behind us one at a time. Now, we need to rig up our arms with joints and bones. Coming into our arms, anything that is independent with a crown will already have a handle. And you can see here that our character's glowing yellow when I grab this handle, and when I hover this handle over top of him, watch what happens. He changed color to green. That means that we're attached. So right here, our arm is unattached, and now it's attached. And this point is your point of rotation. So you're going to place that there, and you're going to mark it as his left, or sorry, his right shoulder. Grabbing our handle tool, we're going to place one at his elbow and mark it as such, and then place one towards the middle or so of his hand and mark it as his wrist. We want this last one to be also marked as draggable, not dangle, draggable. I always look for the D, and I always end up clicking this one first on accident when I should be clicking this one. So pay close attention, make sure you're using draggable instead of dangle. Easy mistake. Now there's two ways you can do your boning. Miss Rexy, check this out. I don't think I've ever shown this to you before. So typically we go like this, right? Where we just put in two bones. But we can also go like this. We can draw along the outside. And what that will do is kind of contain all the artwork that's between those two bones. Both of these methods work. It's just a matter of what it looks like when it moves and your preference. So I would personally start off with just one bone like this for the arm, upper arm, and one bone for the lower arm. And then if it looks awkward, come in and move them over and draw a second line and see how it looks like that. So we have this arm rigged, and we're going to repeat the process for the left arm. So now that we've already done the work on our left and our right arm, we can actually cut a corner. I'm all about cutting corners. You can hold Shift and select everything associated with the right arm, except the right shoulder, because that is already placed there. We can't duplicate that one. So select the two bones, right elbow, and your draggable right wrist, and then hit Control-C or go to Edit, Copy. And then we're going to come over to our other right arm inside of the body. We're going to drag our shoulder point so our character turns green, and then tag it as a shoulder, and then hit Control-V, and it'll paste the rest of our bones. Just like that. Likewise, you can go to Edit, Paste. And we're going to do that across all the right arms. When you get to your rear angle, if you ever rig a rear angle, Miss Rexy, you'll want to do it backwards. So check this out. Like on left quarter, right arm, you see that our right arm is on our left side. That's his right arm, but it's on our left side. But when the character is backwards, which let's go ahead and turn all these other angles off. There we go. You'll see here that his left arm is actually on our left side because he's turned around. So make sure you're paying attention when you're rigging up your rear angle, if you're using a rear angle, and that you don't go ahead and paste your right arm onto your left arm. You actually need to change your right elbow to your left elbow and your right wrist to your left wrist, and vice versa for the other side. Going into our walking angles for rigging up, let's turn off frontal. And we're going to come into left profile here. We're missing a hand. That's funny. So our left profile is our walking profile. This needs rigged a little differently. Do you remember what we do differently? Oh, you haven't rigged up a walking profile yet, Miss Rexy. Okay, so make sure you pay attention here, because this part's super important. So when we're doing walking, let me turn on my camera real quick. Oh, you're not going to be able to see it. So when we're walking, if we tag our shoulders and our hips, we get shoulder sway and hip sway while we're walking. And personally, I think it doesn't look good. That's just my own personal preference. So to avoid that, on my walking angles, I actually don't tag my shoulders or my hips. So coming into right arm, because that's the one we've been focusing on, we'll drag our handle up for a point of rotation. Do not tag it as your right shoulder. Leave that off. And then paste the rest of your handles on. And since this is a different angle, it's a 3/4 angle, you'll actually need to adjust those handles a little bit. See, I got to bring them in just a little bit. But the angle that they're at should be fine. Coming into our right profile, we're going to go to the right arm and do the exact same. And you can see here that our bones matched up pretty good on this one. And now that that part's done, we need to go through and rig the left arm on all angles. Remember, you can go back to your frontal angle, go to the left arm that we've already rigged. Oh, so we'll go through the left arm that we already rigged, and we'll select everything with the exception of the shoulder, and Control C or Edit Copy. And then go across your left arms and do the exact same thing. We're going to paste it on, keeping in mind that you need to change the tags on the rear angle to be the right side, and do not tag your shoulders on the walking angles down here. Oh, and I realize I had the wrong puppet up right here, the wrong angle. I'm not rigging the frontal on this one. I am rigging the rear. It's just not visible. Silly me. So this is the one we were just rigging there at the end with his left arm. So you see the left and the rights coincide to the correct side. Moving on to our walking angles. Again, making sure you don't do the shoulder or hips. And typically on the walking angles, you can make the hands draggable, but I find I don't use draggable hands while walking too often. And now that we have our arms rigged, we're going to go through and rig up all of the legs. So now we need to go in and rig all of the legs. And just like the arms, we're going to leave the hips on the stationary angles and leave the hips off from the walking angles. Again, you can add those on and see how it behaves. Play with your hip sway percentile and see if it looks good. But typically, I don't like the way it looks. So coming in, we have left leg. We're going to, you don't place a hip handle because the hip is going to be your center of rotation. Place a kneecap and actually go a little south of the kneecap, because when you add a kneecap handle, the center point is going to be in the same spot. Check this out. Ooh, actually it moved it a little lower, but you see that appeared about in the middle. And we want this one, the one that says origin, to be his hip. And then the one that we placed will be his kneecap. And then when it comes to rigging up the legs, the feet, Miss Rexy, we need, do you know what an equilateral triangle is?
No.
So an equilateral triangle is a triangle that, if I grab my bone tool here, a triangle that is equal on all sides, just like that. That would be an equilateral triangle, whereas this one right here would not, because this side is shorter than these two sides. So you see all of these are the same length, all the sides are. That's what we call an equilateral triangle. A little geometry lesson for you. So we want to draw an equilateral triangle from the ankle. Well, you don't want to draw one. You want to place one using your handles from the ankle, and then where your pinky toe is actually going to be your heel. And where your big toe is going to be your left toe. Using your bone tool, typically I only put 2 bones in my legs, but if your foot is bending weird in any way, the real solution is to come in and play with these handles and move them around a little bit. Like if you find that your left toe is down, but your right toe artwork is like way up here, come in and move these handles around. But typically, as long as you have them in that equilateral triangle formation, they should stick flat to the ground. Coming over to, well, what we're going to do is we're going to select all of our left leg assets. And if you would like, well, we'll get to that in a second. We're going to select all of our left leg assets and go to Edit Copy, or also Control C, Command C if you're on Windows or Macintosh. Coming into all of our left legs, you can see you might have to reposition or redraw some of your lines for the angles because of the angle of your leg. So in this case, we're just using the handles. We deleted the bones. But again, we're trying to keep that equilateral triangle formation as best as we can. And then draw your new bones in so they contour with your character's legs. I like this character because he has pressed pants, so we can kind of see the angle his leg's supposed to take. And we're going to draw the bones, and then rear is actually, the nice thing about the rear angle is if we go to left leg, actually we'd want to go to right leg and paste, that should actually work out just as well. Yeah, that should work out just as well as it does on the frontal angle, only you'll have to replace your left, obviously, with right. So your left knee becomes your right knee, your left ankle becomes your right ankle, and so on. There we go. We have all the left legs rigged up on the stationary angles. We're going to turn off rear, turn on frontal. We're going to close frontal up. And now we're going to come into the walking angles and start rigging up their left legs. So coming into left leg, don't mark your hip because it's a walking angle. We're going to place left knee, left ankle, left heel, and left toe. I recommend doing heel to toe because if you do toe to heel, this can cover, the word can cover the other side. Okay, so coming into left leg here, we're going to place our hip handle without tagging it as a hip. You know why we don't tag it as a hip, Miss Rexy? Because it looks silly. That's why.
Mm.
And now that we've rigged up our left walking sides, we're going to go through and rig up all of our right sides the exact same way. Okay, so here's the cool part. When you get to your legs, you can actually, on the non walking angles, only on the 3/4. Don't do this to the frontal angle. Only on the 3/4, and I guess on the rear it might work as well. You can create a draggable handle, but to make your feet draggable, it needs to be on the heel. The draggable handle has to be on the heel. But doing that to your left heel and right heel on your stationary angles will let your character have draggable feet, which is an easy way to make the sitting animation happen. And you'll notice that our legs are independent on our quarter angles, but they're not independent on our frontal angles. There's actually a reason for that. So some of our legs, or one pair of our legs, is required to be pinned to the ground. Otherwise, your character will look like a clock where your face is the center of the clock and your limbs are the hands of the clock. And they'll just spin around your head and it'll look very goofy. Oh, and make sure on your stationary angles you are tagging your hips. And even on these stationary angles, even though the legs aren't independent on this frontal one, your character will still adjust his weight on those legs. So when your character leans left, because these tags are here, the artwork will still kind of like shift to look like there's weight being put on that leg, despite the fact that it's not independent. So it doesn't matter if your frontal legs are not independent. It's important that they're not independent at all. We want the crown off. Okay, so we have our legs are rigged up. We have our arms rigged up. We have a few more hotkeys we have to create here. So the first one, we have our head angles and we have our arm angles, but we need our body angles. So what we need to do, well, first of all, on our left profile and our right profile, we're going to select them both by holding Control and clicking them, not the frontal, but the bottom two angles here. And we want to actually click the little Lego brick, the plus icon that says Add a Behavior. And we want to add Walk all the way at the bottom. And then coming over here, we want to change it from immediate to left and right arrow keys. And depending on your puppet, I know because I've rigged this single puppet here like 7 times for videos, that the strength, which is right here, stride strength, I want to turn that down to like the 70s or the 60s. And that's just because I know how it looks naturally. You might have to play with that. Okay. So let's see here. We have to create a hotkey here. If you click and drag frontal, you can actually create a swap set just by clicking and dragging. And obviously we want frontal to be the default. And we'll change our hotkeys to A, S, and D. And then we'll select all of those and we'll set them to latch. And then this is your stationary angle, so we're going to rename it STATIONARY, stationary angles. And then we're going to create another one by clicking and dragging Professor K to swap set. And we're going to rename this one walking. And then we're going to set left profiles hotkey to N and right profiles to M. We're going to select them all and we're going to set them to latch. I think that's it. We're going to create a scene and we're going to see what it looks like. He's looking really good. He's only missing a couple things. His hands drag. They're stretchy. Let's see our hotkeys. Our hotkeys are working. Okay, so now we need to add limb IK. Limb IK is basically the physics of how arms and legs should move. And you can edit those physics to achieve angles of arms and legs that you need. Now, limb IK typically is applied to the master layer up top, but the way we built this puppet is we have actually 4 arms on the frontal angle. So on this frontal angle, what we're going to do is actually on this frontal angle on top arms, or no, I think we want to do it to bottom arms. On left and right bottom arm, we want to click the add a behavior button and add limb IK. On frontal, we want to click the plus, add a behavior, and add limb IK. Now the frontal one is going to add limb IK to the top arms, the left leg, and the right leg. But it'll ignore the left and right arm on the bottom because limb IK is for human use. And humans typically, not always, but typically only have 2 arms and 2 legs. So we need to put it on these bottom layers so it'll apply to these. Now what I like to do is I like to name them so I can know what I'm doing later. So selecting frontal with the frontal limb IK, we're going to come to limb IK and behaviors, click the 3 bars here and click rename, and we're going to call this frontal IK. And then coming to right arm on the body layer, we're going to rename it and we're going to call this back right arm IK. And for the left arm, we're going to do the same, rename back left arm IK. And now for your left quarter, rear, left profile, and right profile, you can click all of those at once, select add behavior, and select limb IK. And then I would go through and rename each of these like this. We're going to name that one left walking IK, and right profile, we're going to name right walking IK. So now we have our limb IK and we have our cycle layers. Let's come over to the record tab and see how it behaves. Oh, I don't think we programmed a hotkey for stuff. Let's see. Oh, yes, we did. So you'll see now our blink happens in a cycle instead of all at once. Our hair should have a nice little dangle to it. Actually, the head has a dangle to it, so we'll have to go back and fix that. Let's come to rig mode real quick and let's search the word hair. And I believe the problem is our top hair so if say your top layer is a hat, because the top hair is also where you'd put like a hat if you had a hat layer. If it's a hat, you don't want it independent, but if it's hair that you want to like dangle, I believe you're going to want it to be independent by clicking the crown icon, just like that. And you can see by selecting multiple layers at once, by holding control, we can apply the crown to multiple layers at once. Let's come over to record mode. And now you see our whole forehead doesn't wiggle, just our hair does. Coming into our hotkeys, you can see we have our forward-facing arms, and they don't stretch, and our backward-facing arms. And then pressing this button right here, you can see we can have one forward and one back. So we can kind of have our character floss, or both up front or both in back. We have one more small section we need to rig up, which is the hands. See, our angles work fine. Oh, let's look at the walking. The walking is not working. That's not good. I don't think I added a walk, did I? I did. So we don't want walk on the left profile and right profile. We actually want to remove it from that. I believe we actually want to drop it, if I'm remembering correctly, on the body. So closing out a hair, come into left profile and right profile, and I think we want to drop walk on the body layer. And obviously changing that to left and right arrow keys and the stride length to around the mid-60s. And you can see your walking should be working fine. But you see that our arms are kind of at an awkward angle. Well, we added a bunch of limb IKs. So you see we have walking, left walking IK. We can actually use our, or it might actually be in the walk. It's in the walk. Oh, it's in the walk. And we're going to do arm angle. So you can see here we can change the angle that our arms are at as we walk to be more natural. You can also change your elbow bend percentage. And I believe on our, one more thing I want to do on our master layer here, drag your point of rotation more down lower on the main files here. So the very top layer, drag your origin handle down, and then also on like all of your angles, I like to drag this origin handle a little lower just to lower my point of rotation. Sometimes you want to put it like in the belly button area. Sometimes I go a little lower than that just to make it look a little more natural. There we go. And you can see I like the point of rotation more. Oh, and one final thing I like to do is at the topmost layer, the very top layer, grab your stick tool, drag it across his feet, and mark it as fixed. And this will hold your character in position a little better. You notice beforehand my character's foot was floating, his left foot was floating a little bit. We have one more small section to go over, and that's rigging the hands. Coming into rig mode here, we're going to come down, and this is one of the more annoying parts because the more hands you have, the more difficult it is. But we're going to start at the, actually I like to start at the bottom layer. Opening up your right arm hands and your left arm hands. We're going to select from default all the way down to hand 16, a home whenever you have. We're going to create two new swap sets. And we're going to drag your right hands to the first swap set, and then we're going to right click that swap set and rename it right hands. Make sure you got one set as default. Close that, rename the second swap set left hands, and we'll go through and select all your left hands from default on down to whatever number. And there you go. Now our hands are rigged on that one angle. Unfortunately, now we need to go in, we'll close right angle, we need to go to left angle, open up our hands, left arm hands, and we need to match them. So we have left hands over here. I like to make this big. We have left hands over here, and we find the left arm, left hands section, and we pair them up. So default with default, 1 with 1, 2 with 2, and so on. Okay, so we're going to stop there. I'm on the tutorial. I'm not going to rig up all the hands because doing the math, that is 192 different hands I have to layer. But just pair your right hands up with your right hands and your left hands up with your left hands, and make sure you do that across all angles. Here I've done left profile and right profile so far. Then I would want to come in up to rear, open up left arm and right arm, and go into the hands, which isn't in the rear angle. So we'll come into right quarter, we'll go to left arm, we'll go to right arm, we'll open up the hands, as you can see here, and then right arm hands default, right arm hand 1, right arm hand 2, and you're going to go through and do that with every single hand. Now when it comes to hotkeys, we're just going to set one. Pick one random hand, and we're going to use O and P. And we're going to set these both to latch. Coming into our record tab, I'll activate one of the angles that has all the hands rigged. Oh, we don't have a default set for the left hand. There we go. And you can see we can swap between them. And then if we go to timeline, after we've activated our hands, well, first of all, what we want to do is turn off all of these red dots, and then activate the trigger's red dot so it's armed. Press your hotkeys to activate your hands, and then you can go to timeline, record a 1-frame take, and you'll see all these little bars show up down here. This is everything that was armed. And if you hold Alt, you can cut into these, as you see here with a little razor blade, and we can select like hand 13, hand 8, hand 2, and this is how you can select different hands to show up in your timeline, as you see, because we don't have enough hotkeys to do all of these hands. That between the two hands we have 32 hotkeys, and there's only 26 letters in the alphabet, so we can only have 26 hotkeys plus 0 through 1, so I guess 36. But that's still not enough if you want to include all the other hotkeys we have. So this is a workaround for that. As you see here, we just finished rigging this character up. He has all the angles a character would need. He has, oh, did we rig up? Wait, one more thing I don't think, yeah, we did. Stationary angles, ASD. So you see that we have the ability to not only go anywhere in this scene, but we also have the ability to interact 365 degrees in this scene around our character. And using tools such as transform and other stuff you'll see in the next tutorial video, we can accomplish just about anything we need to with the illusion of animation.